Lionel Messi just scored his first hat trick at a World Cup. He tied the all-time scoring record at this tournament. He delivered a performance that will be replayed for decades. And right now, almost nobody in the football world is talking about any of that. They are talking about a moment in the first half, one that cameras caught from 6 different angles, that VAR reviewed, and that somehow, against all logic and against the read of nearly every analyst watching live, resulted in absolutely nothing. Not a yellow card, not a red. Nothing at all. Algeria's defender went down in visible pain. The referee waved play on, and the football world exploded. This is the story of the incident that has split the 2026 World Cup right down the middle. And the question that millions of fans are now asking out loud: was this a genuine refereeing error, or is this tournament already showing the world exactly who it protects and who it does not? Let us walk through exactly what happened, because the details matter here more than they usually do. In the first half of Argentina's opening group match against Algeria in Kansas City, with the score still level at 0-0, Messi went into a challenge for the ball and lost his footing. What followed was a tackle from behind on Algerian captain Asa Mandi, Messi's studs making direct contact with the back of Mandi's right calf. Mandi went down immediately in obvious discomfort. Algerian players surrounded the referee, demanding a card. Polish official Szymon Marciniak, the same man who took charge of the 2022 World Cup final between Argentina and France, awarded only a free kick. No caution, no card of any kind. VAR did get involved. The video assistant referee initiated a review of the contact, exactly as the system is designed to do for incidents of this nature. And after that review, for reasons that FIFA has yet to explain with any real clarity, Marciniak's original decision stood. No upgrade, no card. The challenge that broadcast commentators were already calling a clear red card in real time, while it was happening, was waved through by the very technology that FIFA has spent years and billions of dollars promoting as the definitive solution to exactly this kind of controversy. 17 minutes later, Messi opened the scoring with a trademark strike from outside the box. By the final whistle, he had completed his hat trick, and Argentina had cruised to a 3-0 victory that announced their World Cup defense in the most emphatic way imaginable. The post-match conversation, though, did not belong to the football. It belonged to the fool. Former Manchester City defender Nedum Onuoha, working as a pundit on American broadcast coverage, did not hedge his opinion. He said directly that, approached with any kind of consistency, the incident should have been a red card. His colleague on the same broadcast, former Venezuela international Alejandro Moreno, went even further. He called it 100% a red card, and specifically questioned why the video assistant referee never once asked the main official to walk over and look at the replay on the pitchside monitor. Not a soft suggestion that the call was harsh, a direct statement that the system failed to do the one job it exists to do. The reaction from the football world beyond the broadcast booth was just as immediate. This became a genuinely global conversation within hours. Former Algerian international striker Islam Slimani said publicly that he was stunned by what he saw, arguing that any other player in that exact situation would almost certainly have been punished far more severely. That kind of statement, coming from a man who played at the highest level of European football for over a decade and understands referee decision-making as well as almost anyone, carries real weight. Former Egyptian international Mohamed Abu Trika voiced similar concerns live on television, openly questioning the referee's judgment in a discussion watched across the Arab world. And legendary French striker Thierry Henry, who has seen his fair share of World Cup controversy from both sides of the touchline, said on social media that he loves Messi deeply, has enormous respect for the man and everything he has achieved, but that, looking at this footage, he simply cannot see how a card was not awarded. The reaction on his post was almost entirely in one direction. Most commenters agreed it was a red card and pointed to what they called a troubling pattern of VAR inconsistency running through this tournament. This was not a fringe complaint limited to outraged social media accounts. This was former elite players, people who have stood on football's biggest stages themselves, looking at the same footage and arriving at the same uncomfortable conclusion. And then there was the reaction from ordinary supporters, which spread across social media with a speed and intensity that genuinely surprised even seasoned observers of football controversy. One widely shared comment summed up the mood with brutal simplicity. Messi escaping a red card, no VAR review, just hand Argentina the trophy now. It was meant as dark sarcasm, but underneath the sarcasm was a genuine and growing anxiety about whether this tournament's biggest stars are operating under a different set of rules than everyone else on the pitch. That anxiety did not appear out of nowhere. It has context, and that context makes the incident in Kansas City land with far more force than it would have on its own. Months before this tournament began, Cristiano Ronaldo received a red card during a World Cup qualifying match for a violent elbow on an opposing defender. Under FIFA's own disciplinary code, the offense carried a mandatory minimum 3-match suspension. FIFA's disciplinary committee reduced that punishment to a single match, suspending the remaining 2 matches under a probationary period and citing his previously clean international disciplinary record as justification. Multiple national federations explored legal challenges to the ruling. Analysts across the sport openly accuse FIFA of protecting its most commercially valuable player from the consequences that any other professional on the pitch would have faced for the exact same offense. That decision did not happen in isolation. It set a precedent. It told the footballing world in the clearest possible terms exactly how this tournament's governing body is prepared to treat its biggest global stars when the rules and the brand collide. Tonight in Kansas City, that precedent met its first real test on the pitch itself, in real time, with the cameras rolling and the VAR system standing by. And the outcome looked remarkably familiar. Now, to be fair to the officials, there is a layer of genuine complexity here that deserves acknowledgement. Some incidents that look devastating on a slow-motion replay from one specific angle look considerably less severe from another. Force, intent, and the precise point of contact all matter enormously in these decisions, and reasonable football people can watch the same footage and reach genuinely different conclusions about exactly where this challenge sits on the spectrum between a reckless foul and a sending-off offense. Officiating a World Cup at the highest level is an extraordinarily difficult job. Simon Marciniak has earned his reputation as one of the most respected referees in the world through a long career of high-profile decisions made correctly under enormous pressure. But that is precisely why the explanation matters so much here, and why its absence is so damaging. When VAR specifically reviews an incident and chooses not to recommend a card, the football world deserves clarity about the reasoning, not vague statements about insufficient force, not official silence, but a genuine explanation of exactly what standard was applied and why this specific challenge did not meet it. That explanation has not arrived with anything like the urgency this controversy demands, and its absence allows the worst possible interpretation to fill the void. The worst possible interpretation in a tournament that has already faced accusations of bending its own disciplinary rules for its most famous players is exactly the interpretation that is currently spreading across every football conversation on the planet. Algeria's manager and players, to their enormous credit, have not turned this into an excuse for the result. Issa Mandi himself, in his post-match comments, focused not on the missed card but on Messi's brilliance, calling him perhaps the finest player of all time, and acknowledging that Algeria knew exactly what they were walking into and simply could not contain him. That kind of sportsmanship deserves recognition. It would have been easy, genuinely easy, for Algeria to make tonight entirely about the officiating. They chose not to. But the players' graciousness does not erase the question. It simply means the question is now being asked by everyone else on their behalf. And the question is not limited to one incident on one pitch in Kansas City, because this tournament was already in political and institutional crisis before a single ball was kicked. Weeks before the opening whistle, a story broke that cut to the core of everything FIFA claims to stand for. Omar Artan, a Somali referee, one of FIFA's 52 designated match officials for this tournament, and a man who had arrived in Miami with a valid visa and valid documentation, was denied entry to the United States by U.S. Customs and Border Protection at Miami International Airport. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed the decision, stating that Artan was determined to be inadmissible due to vetting concerns, without elaborating further. The Trump administration subsequently alleged that Artan had connections to suspected members of terrorist organizations. Artan and Somali officials have disputed this characterization. He was detained for several hours before being sent back to Istanbul, the city from which he had flown to attend the tournament he had spent years preparing to officiate. FIFA's response was, to put it diplomatically, underwhelming. A spokesperson confirmed that Artan would be unable to train or officiate at the 2026 World Cup, and offered a statement that essentially handed all authority to the host government. FIFA does not engage in the immigration procedures of host nations, which includes the evaluation of visas, and has been informed by relevant authorities that Mr. Artan's status will remain unchanged for the time being. The organization that spent years demanding political neutrality from its member associations could not find the institutional spine to push back when one of its own officials was barred from entering the country hosting the tournament. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter, for all his own considerable baggage, put it in plain terms. A FIFA World Cup host country must guarantee two fundamental principles: the safety of the country and the unrestricted entry of all qualified teams, officials, and referees. The case of referee Omar Artan is against one of these obligations. FIFA must never compromise the universality of football. The BBC described the incident as a sign that the U.S. government, not FIFA, wields effective control over this event. That is not a fringe position. It is the conclusion that a growing number of institutions, journalists, and football administrators have arrived at independently. Artan returned home to Mogadishu and was greeted by crowds and Somali officials who treated him as a national hero. That reception says something real about the emotional weight of what happened to him. It also underlines just how visible this controversy is across the African continent and the broader global South. Regions whose relationship with FIFA's promises of fairness and inclusion has always been complicated, and whose patience with those promises is running thin. Artan's exclusion, however, is just one chapter in a much larger and more troubling story about who is really running the 2026 World Cup. Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, has spent the past several years in what multiple investigative reports have described as an extensive and deliberate campaign to align himself personally and institutionally with Donald Trump. The New York Times published a detailed investigation documenting how Infantino cultivated Trump's favor across multiple years, visiting Mar-a-Lago and Trump's golf properties, attending the premiere of a documentary about Melania Trump, and appearing at Trump's inauguration in January 2025. Infantino has described his relationship with Trump as absolutely essential for the success of the World Cup, arguing publicly that the tournament would not have been possible in its current form without the U.S. president's involvement and support. In December 2025, during the official World Cup draw held in Washington, D.C., Infantino presented Donald Trump with what he called the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize. The human rights advocacy group Fair Square filed a formal complaint with FIFA's Ethics Committee arguing that this act alone constituted a blatant infringement of FIFA's obligation to remain neutral. The complaint identified 4 distinct alleged violations of FIFA's own neutrality guidelines, including social media activity by Infantino that appeared to endorse Trump's political agenda, and an interview at the American Business Forum in Miami, in which Infantino stated publicly, "We should support what Trump is doing in the U.S., because I think it's looking pretty good." A decade ago, senior soccer executives were afraid to set foot on American soil, worried about possible arrests in connection with the wide-ranging FBI and Department of Justice investigation into FIFA corruption that culminated in the 19-count indictment unsealed in 2015. An indictment that alleged more than $150 million in kickbacks and bribes paid to FIFA executives by officials and marketing companies competing for rights to the Men's World Cup. Today, Infantino is a regular visitor to the Oval Office. The transformation is either a remarkable political rehabilitation or a warning sign about what FIFA has traded in order to achieve it, depending entirely on who you ask. When Infantino faced the media for the first time in 3 years, just days before the tournament opened, his performance did not reassure the skeptics. He described the Omar Artan situation as merely unfortunate. he offered a vigorous and extended defense of President Trump when asked about the political context surrounding the tournament. And when journalists and commentators raised legitimate concerns about FIFA's institutional independence, he told them, in terms that were not particularly diplomatic, to chill. Critics within football governance, human rights organizations, and the press described the press conference as a missed opportunity at minimum and a confirmation of their worst fears at worst. The BBC published a column arguing directly that Infantino could have stood up for the World Cup and chose not to. Against this backdrop, an excluded referee, a suspended ban reduced for the world's most commercially valuable player, an institutional leadership that has wrapped itself around a sitting head of government, the moment in Kansas City in the 31st minute of Argentina's opening match does not look like an isolated officiating error. It looks like part of a pattern. Whether that perception is entirely fair to Simon Marciniak and his officials, who may genuinely have believed they made the right call in real time, is a separate question. Perception and institutional credibility are not the same thing. But in an environment where FIFA has consistently chosen commerce over principle, optics over accountability, and proximity to power over the independence that the office demands, perceptions have become indistinguishable from reality for millions of people watching this tournament. Messi himself will wake up tomorrow as the story of the night for all the right reasons. A hat trick. A shared scoring record that places him among the all-time greats of this tournament. A victory that announces Argentina as serious and genuine contenders to defend their 2022 title. He is 38 years old, and he is still doing this. That achievement is real. It deserves to be celebrated without an asterisk attached to his name. The man who currently plays his club football with Inter Miami has given this game more than most players manage across 3 careers. And nobody serious is suggesting that what happened in the 31st minute was calculated or intentional on his part. But football has a long memory for moments like this one. And the question that Algeria's players, Algeria's fans, and millions of neutral observers around the world are asking tonight is not going away simply because the scoreline says 3-0. The question is structural. It is institutional. It asks whether this tournament, hosted in a country whose government can bar referees from entry without consequence, organized by a leadership that has publicly aligned itself with that government's head, and administered under a disciplinary framework that appears to treat its most commercially valuable athletes differently than everyone else, whether this tournament can credibly claim to be governed by the rules it publicly espouses. That is a harder question than whether Messi should have seen red in Kansas City. And it is the question that the next 4 weeks of this World Cup will either answer or deepen. Right now, nothing in the behavior of FIFA's institutional leadership suggests they are in any hurry to provide the clarity this moment demands. And in that silence, a tournament that promised the world consistency, fairness, and the most technologically advanced officiating in the history of the sport is already watching that promise come apart at the seams. Not with a dramatic scandal, but with something quieter and in some ways more corrosive. A slow accumulation of decisions, exceptions, and silences that, taken together, tell you exactly who this tournament was really built to serve.